Okay, this week is a face-to-face week for hybrid students. So if you're a hybrid student, you'll do all of this in class. For the online students, you'll be doing your environmental assessment through the Canvas page. And after you look at the unit outcomes as well as the assignment description, you get into the directions of exactly how that is done. Specifically, we're looking at how the environment affects your population that you've chosen for focus this semester. There's a few ways that you can find this information without having to start all over. First, there's a link here for Healthy People 2020's examples of physical determinants of health. There's some information there that could be very helpful, particularly getting the wheels turning as far as thinking through what possible areas to look at, what possible concerns you may want to consider in terms of your population. Second, you did a Get on the Bus assignment earlier in the semester, back toward the very beginning, and a lot of the information you found in the Get on the Bus assignment can be used when we start looking at some of the observations at a neighborhood and community level, and possibly even some at a county or regional level. You also did population engagement hours earlier this semester, and so in that population engagement, you found more information, things that may be environmental hazards for physical environment, both at the individual and home level. So a lot of this information you've already looked at in different ways, but this is pulling it together into an assessment. There are two portions that you need to complete. The assessment as well as an interpretation of those findings. So in part one, again, you're looking specifically for how the environmental health hazards in the physical environment adversely impact your population compared to the general population. First, you're going to look, and again, these can be done by bullet point. If you see there in the instructions, you can have a bullet point that says individual and some bullet points underneath for anything that may be disproportionately affecting your population at individual level. This is particularly common if you look at individuals with addiction and substance misuse, abuse, that type of thing. Then there's hazards that are definitely present at an individual level, and certainly are for other populations in this course as well. At a home level, you can look and see what areas there may be of particular concern. That includes things such as loose area rugs, small pets, broken steps, all of that. But also if you look at populations such as if you've chosen the homeless population or individuals who are survivors of domestic violence, then that home setting, there may be some substantial hazards above and beyond the general population. Next, so these two also you can get the information in part just from your own personal knowledge, but as well as your population engagement hours. Now, when it comes down to the neighborhood and community, a lot of this you were able to see when you did the Get on the Bus assignment much earlier in the semester. So you can pull from that, but this is through the lens, again, specifically of your population that you've selected. So in this, in the neighborhood community where you are, look for, abandoned buildings, street lights, that type of thing. But, for example, if your population had mobility impairment issues, then having poor sidewalk conditions or no sidewalks in an area would be a much larger hazard for those who are in a wheelchair compared to the general population. And so that would be a really large concern. Crime is also something that can be considered in this aspect, and you, in the Get on the Bus assignment, you looked up some of those crime statistics for the neighborhoods and for the area. And so that's something that, for example, if the person is homeless, but they're also living in a neighborhood that has a higher crime rate or things like that, there's increased risk for concerns in their physical environment. Now you're going to go down and look at a little broader spectrum. These right here, these three settings, or these three bullet points, do need to have APA references. You're going to look at a county and regional level, a state level, and a national level. Now at the county and regional level, that's looking at things like mining. As you all know, the inversion hits pretty heavily in much of the, especially along the Wasatch Front in Utah. We have extreme weather conditions from very hot summers to very cold winters, as well as natural disasters, risks for earthquakes, all of that. We won't even get into the supervolcano in Yellowstone because it makes me not want to sleep at night. But if you look through county and regional things and state and national, just looking at what possible things may disproportionately affect your population. And so kind of take a peek through those and see what is applicable to your population. And then you're going to go down to part 2, And after you've done this whole assessment in the first part with those 6 bullet points, in part 2 you're going to kind of do your own interpretation. So in this you'll answer 4 questions. Again, the upper part can all be bullet points. This part needs to be more writing of sentences, quite a few sentences or a paragraph underneath each one. The first one is, what are the biggest hazards faced by your population? And is there a common theme present among these, or among them? And then, which level do you feel is responsible for most negative impact on the health for your population? So of those 6 levels we looked at earlier. And then, what factor or which factor at the level is particularly dangerous and why? And also, what steps can be taken to address hazards at the individual, home, or neighborhood/community levels? So, as a nurse, if you were asked to go in and do an intervention, what intervention would you do? How can you really address those hazards? And then finally, as an advocate for the population, what organization or person can you contact to address these hazards at the county or state level? Now, this one right here, the others need to have a few sentences or a paragraph underneath. This one right here, you need to have very specific contact information. So the exact information for an organization or person that you can contact to address hazards. If you look in the extra engagement opportunities that are available in this course, you'll notice that an option is to write a letter or letters advocating for your population. So this would be able to provide you the information for who you could contact in order to really advocate for changes to decrease these hazards.